Las Vegas Raiders and the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks are more than a field goal favorite here. -3.5 at home against the Raiders. We do see a 47.5 in this one. Fellas, we know we're getting the Seahawks off of a bye here. So did they regroup? Did they figure something out? Is there anything that they've got going on for them? One of the things we do know, and this we can, Stephen, take with us, is that the Seahawks defense, while it was absolutely atrocious to begin the season, has improved, and it has improved over the course of the season. And I think that what we're seeing is basically just a lot of young guys that needed experience and needed to figure out the NFL, need to figure out this game speed, and need to figure out how everything moves just a little bit faster. And I think what we're seeing with that defense, there is some legitimacy to it. I don't think that it's all smoke and mirrors. Then we get this Raiders team that kind of, trips and fumbles their way into a win last week. I didn't really pull anything from that win. I don't really take anything from it with this Raiders team at all. So 3.5 though is an interesting line. A flat 3, maybe you could talk me into the Seahawks. The 3.5 kind of has me hitting the pause button.
You didn't take anything away from the Raiders having 6.6 yards per play against the Broncos defense. I know the Raiders defense is bad. I know Josh McDaniels is not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, but I was at least impressed by the Raiders. And I have been a Seattle guy halfway through the season here, adjusting, giving them credit where it's due for how improved they are. But I'm having a hard time getting a 3.5 here for the Seahawks. And I think I'm leaning towards Raiders here. I can tell you our lead writer, Eli Hershkovich, has already bet the Raiders at +4. I think he said he'd still bet it at +3.5. So yeah, I think the Raiders showed us last week that they're still interested in playing hard. I think Derek Carr, with tears at the podium, is still trying to play hard and get guys to play hard. And this seems really expensive for Seattle to me.
Yeah, we like yards per play, and don't get me wrong, I like yards per play, and I think it's a decent statistic, but yards per play can be certainly skewed, right? So Devontae Adams had a 35-yard reception. Josh Jacobs had a 43-yard reception. Foster Moreau had a 33-yard reception. Mac Hollins had an 18-yard reception. Keelan Cole had a 21-yard reception. So the yards per play can be skewed when you have a bunch of splash plays, right? And a bunch of
Why is that a bad thing, though? It's against the Broncos defense, who we were heralding as one of the 3 best in the league.
No, what I'm saying is it's just that statistic just in general is a pretty decent catch-all. But if you really dig in to the box score, sometimes you can see some discrepancies in all of that is all I'm saying. It shouldn't be just looked at and be like, oh, well, they had consistent success against this defense, where, a lot of that yards per play stuff comes from some splash plays that are mixed in there. Adam, we get a Raiders squad that I don't really know. I don't really know who or what they are. I don't really know the identity really of this team either. I kind of feel like they should just YOLO it the rest of the season and see what Derek Carr has. Just have him throw it 40 times a game and see if there's, if this is the guy that you want to actually build this franchise around or not. But I don't know if they're going to do that either. A 3 and, this team sitting, lowly, really, really underperforming. What do you see here as a 3.5 point underdog?
So I'll be honest here, guys. A lot of the analytics that I normally would look at do not necessarily support the way that I feel about this game, because I think this is a clear Seahawks play against the Las Vegas Raiders. We're talking about the fact that the Raiders won last week, right? So some of those yards per play numbers are also aided by the fact that this game got to overtime in the first place, which it shouldn't have, right? The big play to Foster Moreau and the big play to Devontae Adams. If you think about how we usually evaluate these games and say, in a neutral situation with a coach who isn't Nathaniel Hackett throwing the ball on 3rd and 10 with 1:50 to go, when there clearly is an opportunity to take 40 seconds off the clock, then you look and say the Raiders never would have had the opportunity to build up some of these big plays. So they did it. So you can't take that away from them. But is what the Raiders did against the Broncos last week repeatable? I don't think it is. Now, the Seahawks have not played as well in the last couple of weeks prior to the bye as they had before that, but the Raiders are still a dumpster fire. And the Raiders benefited last week, as I mentioned in an earlier part of the podcast, from the fact that the Broncos had an absolute double derp down by the goal line when they should have gone up by 10 points at halftime. And that game would have been completely over if they don't have a fumble and a blocked field goal. It took everything the Raiders had to be able to get to winning that game in overtime. Seattle is a team that has shown us the ability to have explosive plays. They have shown us an improved defense. And Pete Carroll, whether you like Pete Carroll's play calling or not, is a vastly superior coach to Josh McDaniels. So I think the Seahawks are the side. I realize that's probably going to end up being the public side by the time this thing is all said and done, but I don't really care. I think Seattle is going to win this game by more than 3.5.
Yeah, so basically we're looking at total plays of 62 for the Raiders last week, right? But 68 of those yards came on the two plays between Foster Moreau and Devontae Adams in overtime, right? So if you take the 407 and you take away 68 yards, right, you come to 339. And then if you divide that by 60, we're down to like 5.4 yards per play. Now that's still not bad, but what I'm saying is it's a big difference, right? It's a very big difference that 68 yards came on two plays in overtime, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a good catch-all, but it can be skewed, and it's one of those stats that I like to look at, but I also like to dig a little bit further and see what we're getting out of it. I think I could get to the flat 3 with a Seahawks play here. I don't know about the 3.5. Might just sit and watch this one, but who knows? Maybe some support.
And I just want to be clear here.
Mm-hmm.
Eli bet the Raiders.
Yes.
I have not bet the Raiders. I agree the Raiders are a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk it out with you guys.
Yeah. I do wonder though if the total might just be I could easily, even in some of these losing efforts, right? The Raiders have been able to score 23 points or whatever and 24 points and stuff like that. And these, even in losing efforts. Right. And so I wonder if maybe this is just an over game. Like the Raiders get their 23 and then Seattle gets their 27 and we're easily over the total here. So I don't know. Maybe that's the angle in this one for me. That's something I might dig into a little bit further throughout the course of the week.
For me, Matt, for me, I want to sit back and maybe hope the Raiders get an early score here and I get under a field goal on Seattle. I think I'd like that the best of anything. If I can get a live Seattle -2.5 somehow.